You ever wonder why Darth Sidious used clones for the Grand Army of the Republic? If you really think about it, they were kind of overkill for the situation he needed them in. These were premium quality soldiers made from the DNA of one of the deadliest bounty hunters in the galaxy. Everything from recruiting Jango Fett to be the donor to the process of manipulating the clone's DNA for behavioral modification cost the Sith top credits. On top of that, it took a clone almost 9 years to mature to a state of combat readiness. As a result, the Grand Army of the Republic was exceptionally skilled, but also completely outnumbered by the Separatist droid army, which could churn out dozens of cheap battle droids in a minute. When Obi-Wan Kenobi accidentally stumbled upon the Geonosian clone factories, it forced the Sith to start the Clone Wars prematurely. And if you take a look at the troop number comparisons during this time period, it made absolutely no sense. At the Battle of Geonosis, for instance, the Grand Army of the Republic fielded about 300,000 clone troopers without real capital ships backing them up in orbit, against a Separatist droid army with over 1.2 million droids of varying types deployed on the ground, with an additional 4 million droids in orbit on board Separatist warships. It's almost as if the Confederacy purposely let the Republic win during this battle. Now, Republic commandos who had access to friendly and enemy troop numbers at the beginning of the war were perplexed why Count Dooku didn't just launch an all-out attack against the Republic and destroy its remaining forces right after that battle. And so the clones' cost and slow training time was a huge liability that almost alerted people to Palpatine's plans. So why did Palpatine use these really expensive clones rather than, say, a droid army? Well, before we get there, a quick word from our sponsor for today's video, ownersaber.com. They're going to be giving everyone 40% off of all their lightsabers, including free shipping for the summer. That means all of the lightsabers in their Padawan saber collection, like the Last Brick Lego Blade or the Dunamis, if you're looking for some cross-hilt action. It also means everything in the Master and Replica saber collection as well, including the Kyber Core saber with its exposed Kyber crystal slot, and the Huntsman with its circular blade guard, a special lightsaber used by the Inquisitors. Or Maul's infamous double-ended lightsaber, which can be disconnected for dual-wielding purposes. Check out these lightsabers and many more at ownersaber.com. We'll link it down in the description below so you guys can find it. And also, if you use our promo code EWOK, that's all caps, you'll get an additional $15 off of your purchase. Thank you for your patience. On to the rest of the video. The Republic didn't have as cheap manufacturing costs as the Outer Rim-based Separatist Alliance, but they did have a much larger industrial base and a lot more resources in manpower and research and development. It was definitely feasible for the Republic to create a droid army that was similar in size and efficiency to the Separatist droid army. The Republic was always reliant on its economic capabilities. This was the old Republic strategy: use its border regions to absorb any incoming threats, and then retool your heavy industry to create weapons of war. The emergency powers given to Chancellor Palpatine during the Clone Wars were not all that uncommon during the old Republic period. It was really the only way around the bureaucratic gridlock created by this system. And it would give Palpatine not just the right to create and command an army, but the right to force the Republic's heavy industries to focus solely on military production. Here in our own Republic, we have similar procedures like the Defense Production Act, which can be used by the president to counter threats like climate change. For instance, the president could allocate the resources and funding necessary to increase the production of depth charges in America. These are underwater explosive devices that were once used to destroy submarines. Because of advancements in technology, now there are far more accurate weapon systems that fit this role. And so depth charges aren't really commonly used that much by modern navies anymore. But these weapons are cheap and an easy solution that can counter the growing number of dolphin incursions in coastal areas and harbors as sea levels continue to rise. Wait, what are we talking about again? Yes, droids. Not only are they cheaper and easier to maintain, they also have a lot less liabilities than the clones do, because the clones are really just humans with some behavioral modification. And also, let's be honest, as much as these talking metallic boxes try to act human and try to imitate human behavior, the average organic citizen in the galaxy most likely won't shed a tear if millions of these droids get destroyed in meaningless battles. It's a lot easier to convince your populace to go to war if they don't actually have to do the fighting themselves. It's typical human behavior. We love to see our enemies get destroyed as long as someone else is doing the dying. And even though the clones didn't have rights either and were treated not all that differently from the droids There was still hesitation by many in the Republic military to throw these clones away like cannon fodder. They were simply too expensive, and again, they are humans. Now, the clones weren't citizens of the Republic. They were technically property of the Kaminoans, so they couldn't really vote or advocate for themselves. But again, their plight was something that others could advocate for. There was this whole dilemma of what to do with the clones when they were too old to fight or began developing a conscience that made them unruly and less likely to follow orders. I mean, there has to be an upside to using the clone troopers, right? And by upside, I'm not talking about their skills and abilities as soldiers. They're clearly very proven to be excellent warriors, but again, this was a war against a controlled opposition. Battlefield success was very easy to achieve, so you didn't really need super soldiers. So what is the upside? Well, the upside I'm talking about today has to do a lot with the clone's ultimate purpose, and that is carrying out Order 66, or the execution of the Jedi. It wasn't easy to shoot a Jedi with a blaster, and that's because the Jedi have the ability to see incoming threats before they actually happen. It's sort of like Spidey senses. But one way you can get through a Jedi's defenses is to get them to drop their guard, as in familiarize yourself with the Jedi so that they feel completely comfortable around you and they drop their Spidey senses to a certain degree. This is exactly what Palpatine wanted to do with the clones and the Jedi. This is the type of evil brilliance that just made Palpatine very extra when compared to all of the Sith Lords in Star Wars history. You see, the Jedi and the clones are actually quite similar to one another. These are both organizations made up of individuals who were trained from birth for service and warfare. They have no choice in determining what their future is, and they are expected to embrace their life of sacrifice with grace and dedication. Say what you want about the Grand Army of the Republic's high command and the Jedi's leadership, but the individual Jedi and clones doing the fighting were generally really solid and wonderful people. And in many ways, their upbringing and training removed a lot of the character flaws that most ordinary people in society had. Without families, without property, jobs, or titles, without money, the clones and the Jedi had relatively tame egos and humble demeanors. This allowed them to have a very single-minded focus on doing their job, which was to serve others and to protect the Republic. During one of the first missions of the war, Grandmaster Yoda is en route to the moon of Rugosa. Controlled by the Toydarians and wedged between Hutt space and Republic territory, Yoda was supposed to meet with the Toydarian king and discuss plans for building a Republic military base on their territory. This would significantly ease Republic logistics in the area. But during their approach to the moon, Yoda's group are ambushed by Asajj Ventress' forces. Dooku was determined to not let the Toydarians' territory fall into enemy hands, and so now Yoda was trapped on the planet with only 3 clones for support, and they would be forced to fight through an entire droid army in order to get an audience with the king. At first, the clones are unsure about how they should interact with this strange Jedi, but immediately Yoda goes into teaching mode.
Sir, the rendezvous point is that way.
As is our enemy. To reach our goal, a straight path we will not follow.
The clones get a quick crash course in how to fight alongside the Jedi, and I imagine it felt like going into battle with a superhero with magical powers. Nothing wins you respect on the battlefield quicker than being excellent at your job and saving other people's lives.
You found us just in time, sir.
Left behind, no one will be.
Yoda's compassion and care for the clones immediately builds trust that makes them a more cohesive unit. And the clones quickly show that they're willing to give their lives up to protect their commander.
With respect, General, maybe you should go on. Let us slow him down.
It's said that when the Jedi first met the clones, there was a weird dissonance in how they saw the clones and how they felt them through the Force. You see, these clone troopers might look like badass soldiers on the outside, but in the Force, all the Jedi could sense was a 9 or 10-year-old. A strange 9-year-old who was far more mature than your average 9-year-old in some ways, but it was also undeniable that the clones had a very fresh and naive look on the world that most children their age had. And I think that really attracts the Jedi's natural tendency to protect others. Yoda looked at the clones and saw 3 brave young boys who had been given all of the training and skills necessary to be talented soldiers. But everything else, like how to be a decent human being, how to communicate with each other, how to deal with stress, overcome, adversity, I don't think the Kaminoans taught the clones any of these human lessons. And the Jedi were immediately empathetic to the clones' situation and their lack of experience. I'm not really sure why the Jedi never tried to free the clones from their captivity. Perhaps it's because the Jedi made the same sacrifices as well and viewed the clone situation as a shared noble sacrifice rather than something worth fighting against. Regardless, many Jedi, not just Yoda, but Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and many others as well, became terrific role models to their clones and encouraged these clones to develop individual personalities and embrace their humanity.
Your faces I wish to see.
There's not much to look at here, sir. We all share the same face.
Deceive you, eyes can. In the Force, very different each one of you are.
I can almost see Yoda having a very similar conversation with a group of younglings, using exactly this tone to get an important lesson across.
Grease, always focused on the enemy, are you? For inspiration, look to yourself and those beside you.
Rise would take Yoda's advice to heart and help take out several enemy tanks in the upcoming battle.
Thyre, rush not into fights. Long is the war. Only by surviving it will you prevail.
Thyre would survive the war indeed, and he would actually become an Imperial shock trooper. He was one of the individuals who reported to Palpatine right after the Sith Lord had his battle with Yoda in the Senate. He would also help recover Anakin Skywalker from Mustafar.
Jack, concerned about weapons you are. Weapons do not win battles. Your mind, powerful it is. Outthink the droids, you can.
Jack would heed Yoda's advice, and from that day on, he would try to better himself by using his brain more and relying on weapons less. And so eventually he would actually become a clone scout trooper. Fate would have it though, he would be the one next to Yoda when the call for Order 66 arrives. Unfortunately for Jack and Yoda, no matter how smart the clone had become, there was no fighting the inhibitor chip in his head, and he would lose his head to Yoda as a result. The reason I'm telling these three stories and what ends up happening to these clones is so that I can illustrate to you just how messed up this entire situation is. The Jedi clearly could not help but mentor these young boys, and it's because of their words of encouragement that many clones would adopt truly unique identities. I mean, look at the 501st, which fought under Anakin Skywalker, Ahsoka Tano, and occasionally Obi-Wan Kenobi. Many members of this unit turned out as headstrong as its leader. Yet guys like Fives, who refused to let his brother Tup die in vain, he would almost uncover the Order 66 plot before it was hatched. Kix would also try to do his own investigation on the matter, but would be stopped by Dooku. Then you have Echo, who got blown up trying to save his unit, and the second he makes it back to Republic lines, he goes right back into the fight, and would eventually defect from the Empire because that was the right thing to do. And of course, we have the most independent-minded clone of them all, Captain Rex, who was almost like a son or brother to Anakin. Something people forget about the Sith is that they were completely infatuated with the Jedi, especially during the Rule of Two era, where they basically hid for 1,000 years and closely observed the Jedi, trying to find their weaknesses. While some Jedi, like Quinlan Vos or Pong Krell, didn't trust or even hated their clones, the majority of the Jedi would adopt their clones like they were a group of younglings. This close relationship shared between the Jedi and the clones is what makes Order 66 so tragic. And the Sith knew this was going to happen. They planned it like this. The Sith always believed that the Jedi's compassion was their greatest source of weakness. Although I would argue that the Jedi's compassion is what won over many clones and planted seeds of doubt into their futures. When Ayala Secura is gunned down during Order 66, it's said that Commander Bly and the rest of his team fired into her body multiple times to make sure that she had a quick and painless death. When Commander Cody took a shot at Obi-Wan Kenobi, he was committing a murder of a friend and ally, something that would haunt him greatly until he finally defected himself. Then there was Captain Gray, who commanded his troopers to gun down Deepa Baliba during Order 66. He was tasked with hunting down Caleb Doom, her apprentice, and killing him. Gray had been really close to both Caleb and Deepa, and he had begun to shake his programming when he realized that he had done the wrong thing by killing Deepa. Gray would eventually sabotage his own ship, killing himself in order to let the young Padawan escape. Never in Star Wars history has there been a sadder story. If I were the Chancellor of the New Republic, I would immediately march to the Imperial Palace and erect a giant statue of a wary Jedi surrounded by his tired clone troopers. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.